My daughter? Oh, she helps with coffee runs and filing. Keeps her busy. The laughter hit me before I could even process what my father had just said. 6 investors sat around that mahogany table in the private dining room, and every single one of them was looking at me with that pitying smile. You know the one. The, "Oh, how nice that daddy gave you something to do" smile. Patricia, the investor on my left, turned to me directly. "Maya, what's your take on the expansion strategy?" I opened my mouth. My father cut me off. "She wouldn't understand the numbers. That's why I'm here." My name is Maya. I'm 27 years old. And in that moment, sitting at that table while my father erased 3 years of my life in one sentence, I realized something important. What he didn't know was that every word he just said was digging his own grave. Let me back up. 3 years ago, I came home with a business degree and no real plan. My mom had passed away 2 years before that. My younger brother was starting college, and my father was running the family manufacturing company the same way he'd run it for 30 years, which would have been fine, except the world had changed and he hadn't. The company was bleeding clients. Revenue was down 35%. And my father, Robert Foster, refused to admit that his old school methods weren't working anymore. I started as temporary help, just filing papers, answering phones, sorting through the disaster that was our client database. But I have this thing where I can't just do a job halfway. I started seeing patterns, problems, solutions. I wasn't the loud, flashy type. I didn't golf with investors or drink scotch at networking events. But I knew how to read a balance sheet, and I knew how to save a sinking ship. So I did. I proposed a digital transformation. My father laughed. Actually laughed. "Sweetheart, manufacturing is about relationships and reliability, not computers." But he let me play around. I think he thought it would keep me busy. Over the next 2 years, I quietly rebuilt everything. New software systems, streamlined production processes. I reached out to potential clients, pitched our capabilities, negotiated contracts. I landed 5 major accounts: Franklin Industries, Westport Manufacturing, Henderson Logistics, Morrison Supply, Pace Distribution. Revenue increased 40%, and my father told everyone it was market recovery and his new strategy. I kept waiting for him to acknowledge what I'd done. Kept thinking that if I just worked harder, proved myself more, he'd finally see me as more than his daughter playing businesswoman. If you've ever been pushed aside by family, subscribe right now and tell me where you're watching from. Because what happened next showed me exactly how blind love can make you. The investor meeting was supposed to be routine. My father wanted expansion funding, and I'd spent 3 weeks preparing the entire presentation: financial models, growth projections, client, testimonials. I knew that pitch inside and out because I'd built every single slide. The morning of the meeting, I walked into his office with my laptop. "I'll take it from here," he said, not looking up from his phone. "You can sit in. Take notes." I stopped. "Dad, I built this entire proposal." He finally looked at me. "And I appreciate the help, sweetheart. But they need to hear from someone with authority." That word. Authority. Like 3 years of saving his company meant nothing because I was his daughter. The meeting started at noon. 6 investors, including Patricia Chen, who had a reputation for funding companies with solid operational foundations. The kind of investor who actually read the numbers instead of just listening to the pitch. My father presented my work as his own. Slide after slide of strategies I'd developed, clients I'd landed, systems I'd built. And he delivered it like he'd done it all himself. Then Patricia asked a technical question about client acquisition methodology. My father fumbled. I watched his face go slightly red as he searched for an answer to a question I could have answered in my sleep. I leaned forward. "Actually, The strategy involved, "Adults are talking, honey." The room went silent. Patricia's eyebrows went up. Two other investors exchanged glances, and I sat there, frozen, while my father steamrolled over me and gave some vague non-answer about relationship building. The meeting ended 20 minutes later. The investors filed out, shaking my father's hand. A few of them smiled at me, that same pitying smile. We walked to the parking lot in silence. I was still processing what had just happened, still trying to figure out if I'd imagined how humiliating that had been. Then my father turned to me. "You almost embarrassed me in there. Stay quiet next time and let the professionals handle business." I drove home in a fog, sat in my apartment and stared at the wall, and realized that nothing I ever did would be enough, because he didn't see me as a professional. He saw me as his daughter. And in his mind, those two things couldn't exist in the same person. I thought that was rock bottom. I was wrong. A week later, my father called a company meeting, announced he was bringing on a consultant to help with the digital expansion. Derek Morrison walked in like he owned the place. Mid-50s, expensive suit, golf tan, my father's buddy from the country club. And according to my father, a business expert with 30 years of experience, Derek got an executive title, equity stake, corner office, to advise on the digital expansion I'd built from scratch. I walked into my father's office that afternoon. "Dad, I developed that entire system." He didn't even look up from his computer. "Derek has 30 years of business experience. You've been here, what, 2 years? 3 years? And I'm the one who brought in Franklin Industries and Westport. You made some phone calls. I closed the deals." That's when I realized he actually believed it. He'd rewritten the story in his head so many times that he genuinely thought he'd done the work. Derek started taking credit immediately. In meetings, he'd reference his strategy for client retention, his approach to operational efficiency, and my father would nod along like it was true. I stayed in my cubicle, the same cubicle I'd been in for 3 years. 2 weeks later, my father hosted a dinner, extended family plus Derek. My uncle asked me about my role in the company turnaround. Before I could answer, my father laughed. Actually laughed. "She likes to think she's running things. Really, I let her handle small stuff so she feels important." Derek chimed in immediately. "Robert's being modest. The strategy here is all his vision." My brother Jack tried to defend me. "Maya's the one who—" My father cut him off. "Your sister is a good assistant, but business at this level? That takes experience she doesn't have." I excused myself, walked to the bathroom and locked the door, stared at my reflection and wondered when I'd become so invisible. On my way back, I passed my father's study. The door was cracked. I heard Derek's voice. "I keep her around because family," my father said. "But honestly, I could hire a real operations manager." I stood there in the hallway, listening to my father discuss replacing me like I was an underperforming employee. Not his daughter, not the person who'd saved his company. Just a problem to solve. I went home that night and didn't cry. I was done crying. 3 days later, my father announced another investor pitch, bigger funding round, expansion into 3 new states. He dropped a stack of folders on my desk. "I need comprehensive deck, financials, testimonials by Friday." That gave me 3 weeks. I worked 80-hour weeks, built models, gathered data, designed presentations. My father would pop in occasionally, glance at my screen and say things like, "Make sure the numbers look good," before disappearing again. The day before the pitch, I stayed late to finish the final slides. Around 8 p.m., I heard voices in the conference room. My father, Derek, and someone else I didn't recognize. I walked closer. The door was cracked. So the equity restructure, the unfamiliar voice said. Must be a lawyer. You're proposing 65% for you, 25% for Derek, and 10% reserved for future hires? Correct, my father said. What about Maya? Derek asked. I held my breath. She's salary. She'll be fine. This is for people who actually built something. I walked back to my desk, sat down, stared at my computer screen. If the deal closed, Derek would get rich off my work. My father would get richer, and I would get nothing. Not equity, not recognition, not even respect. Just a salary and a cubicle. My brother called that night. You okay? You've been quiet lately. I'm done trying to prove myself to him, I said. I'm going to let my work speak for itself. Jack was quiet for a moment. Maya, what are you planning? Nothing. Just the truth. What they didn't know was that I'd been meticulous from day one. I didn't document everything as some grand strategy. I did it to track my own learning and progress. Every client email, every contract negotiation, every financial model. I saved everything, timestamps on every email sent from my account, contracts I'd negotiated, with version histories showing my edits and tracked changes, financial models with metadata showing I'd created them, including every revision. The software systems I'd implemented were registered under my credentials. I had admin access to everything. The Franklin Industries contract had my signature as Director of Operations, a title my father never officially gave me but never corrected when I used it. And most importantly, the clients knew me, not my father. Me. They had my cell phone number. They emailed me directly. As far as they were concerned, I was the company. 2 days after that first investor meeting, Patricia had emailed me directly. Impressive work on the client acquisition model. Let's connect. I'd met her for coffee. Didn't tell my father. We talked about business, about operations, about the challenges of manufacturing in a digital age. And at the end, she'd leaned forward and said something I hadn't forgotten. I've seen this before. Protect your work. She'd given me her card, told me to call if I ever needed anything. I still had that card. I also had a job offer from a competitor. They'd reached out 6 months ago, tried to recruit me. I'd turned them down because I couldn't imagine leaving what I'd built. But now it was insurance. I wasn't planning revenge. I was planning the truth. I called Patricia the next morning. I know you're coming to the pitch tomorrow. I was hoping we could talk before that. We met at a coffee shop 2 blocks from her office. She was direct, the way successful people usually are. No small talk. Straight to business. I've been in business 25 years, she said. I know talent when I see it, and I know who really runs your father's operations. I'd planned to be cautious, professional, but something about the way she said it made me honest. I showed her the emails, the contracts, the evidence that every word of my father's pitch had been built on my work. She read through it all. Then she looked at me. Maya, investors fund people, not just ideas. If we knew the real architect was being cut out. She didn't finish the sentence, didn't tell me what to do, but she planted the seed. The pitch is in 2 weeks, she said. A lot can happen. Then she told me something interesting. The other investors had been asking about me. The young woman with the operations background. They'd noticed me at the first meeting, even if my father tried to make me invisible. I went back to the office, and for the first time in 3 years, I wasn't trying to prove myself to my father. I was preparing to prove him wrong. The next week was surreal. My father completely excluded me from prep meetings. Derek started giving me orders like I was his personal assistant. Can you grab lunch for the investor meeting next week? He asked, standing in my cubicle doorway. Robert wants it catered, nothing too cheap. I looked up from my computer. I'm director of operations, not a caterer. Derek laughed. Actually laughed. Director? Honey, you're an assistant. Don't get ahead of yourself. My father walked past right then. Heard every word. Said nothing. That's when I knew I was done trying to earn his respect. You can't earn something from someone who refuses to give it. 3 days before the pitch, I saw the final presentation deck. My father had left it open on the conference room computer. Every reference to me had been removed. Operations Director Maya Foster proposed had been changed to Company Leadership Implemented. My client testimonials were attributed to Management Team. My financial models were presented as Robert Foster's strategic vision. Derek walked by, glanced at the screen. Looks good, right? Robert really pulled this together. I smiled. Yeah, it's really something. That night, I emailed Patricia. I need to talk to you about the pitch. Then I prepared a master evidence folder. Every email, every contract, every piece of proof that showed who actually built what my father was about to present. I was done being invisible. The morning of the pitch, I dressed carefully. Professional, but powerful. I arrived at the office early before my father or Derek. I loaded my evidence folder onto my tablet, backed it up on a flash drive in my pocket, and I waited. The conference room filled at 10 a.m., 6 investors, including Patricia. My father at the head of the table, confident and smiling. Derek beside him, already acting like he'd closed the deal. And me, in the corner with my tablet and my silence. My father started the meeting the same way he'd started the last one. My daughter Maya helps with day-to-day operations. She'll be taking notes. Patricia looked directly at me, then at my father. Actually, Robert, I'd like to hear from Maya. She seems quite involved in the operational side. My father's smile tightened. Well, she can speak to details, but I'll cover strategy. Patricia didn't look away from me. Maya, walk us through the client acquisition approach. The 40% revenue growth is impressive. My father nodded like he was giving me permission. I stood up, opened my tablet, and began presenting everything I'd built. The digital transformation, the client methodology, the operational efficiencies that had turned the company from bleeding money to profitable. I spoke clearly, confidently, because I wasn't reciting my father's work. I was explaining my own. The investors leaned forward, asked questions. I answered every single one. My father tried to interrupt. What Maya means is that we, as a leadership team. Patricia cut him off. Robert, let her finish. I pulled up the slide showing the company's financial state 3 years ago. Revenue down 35%, clients leaving, production inefficient. This was the company when I came on board after finishing my business degree, I said. My father shifted in his seat. I could see the discomfort on his face. I pulled up my emails, time-stamped, October 2021. Here's my initial proposal for digital CRM integration, then the Franklin Industries first contact, from my account, my outreach. I displayed the contracts, 5 of them, all with my signature as the negotiating party. Westport Manufacturing, Henderson Logistics, Franklin Industries, Morrison Supply, Pace Distribution. These 5 accounts represent 67% of current revenue. Here are the email chains from initial contact through closing, all from my business development work. The investors were staring at my father now. His face had gone red. Derek tried to interrupt. Robert, should we take a break? Patricia didn't even look at him. No, I think we should hear this. I pulled up the equity restructure document, the one my father thought I didn't know about. I'm not here to embarrass anyone, I said. I'm here because you deserve to know who actually runs this company before you invest. My father stood up. Maya, that's enough. You're out of line. I stayed calm. Am I? You told these investors I make coffee. You told our family I handle small stuff. You restructured equity to give Derek 25% while I get salary. I showed them Derek's hire date compared to the performance data. Proved in 3 slides that he'd contributed exactly nothing. One of the investors spoke up. Robert, is this accurate? My father was flustered now. She's exaggerating. Yes, she's been helpful, but the vision, the leadership. I pulled up the metadata on the financial models, showed them creation dates, revision history, user credentials. All me? Patricia looked at my father. Robert, you presented this as your strategic vision. I closed the folder, turned to face my father directly. I spent 3 years saving this company because I loved the work and wanted to make you proud. But you couldn't stand that I was good at it. You couldn't stand that I was better at it. My father's voice was quiet. Maya, you're my daughter. I was trying to protect you from what? Success? Respect? Or just from taking your spotlight? I looked at the investors. You can make whatever decision you want about funding, but you should know who actually built what you're investing in. Patricia spoke before anyone else could. Maya, before you go, are you open to conversations about your future? I looked at my father one last time. He looked smaller somehow. Older. Yes, I said. I am. And I walked out. 2 weeks later, my father started calling. I didn't answer. He left voicemails that ranged from angry to desperate to apologetic. Finally, I agreed to meet him. Coffee shop, neutral ground. He looked tired. I didn't mean to diminish your contributions. You didn't diminish them, I said. You erased them. There's a difference. The investors pulled out. Derek left. You destroyed everything. I set down my coffee cup. No, Dad. I built everything. You destroyed it by pretending you did. His face changed. So you're just going to leave? After everything I gave you? You gave me a cubicle and contempt. I gave you 3 years of my life and a business model that tripled revenue. We're not equal here. He looked desperate now. What do you want me to say? Nothing. For once, your silence doesn't hurt me. It frees me. I walked out of that coffee shop and didn't look back. Patricia had connected me with an investment group. They were funding my own consulting firm. Small manufacturers who needed digital transformation and operational help. 3 of my father's 5 major clients had already committed to working with me. They were loyal to me, not the company, because I was the one who'd built those relationships. I drove past my father's office one last time, saw his car in the parking lot, wondered if he was sitting in there, trying to figure out how to save what was left. I finally understood I never needed his approval. I just needed to stop waiting for it. Now I'm sitting in my own office, small, but mine. My name on the door, my company logo on the wall. I have a client video call in 10 minutes, and I'm actually smiling. The business I'm building now, it has my name on it. And this time, everyone knows exactly who built it. If you've ever had to stand up to family betrayal, hit subscribe and tell me your story. I know I'm not the only one who's had to prove their worth to people who should have seen it all along. Where are you watching from? Drop it below. I always check. And if you're in a situation right now where someone's taking credit for your work, document everything. Every email, every idea, every contribution. Your work has your fingerprints on it. Make sure you can prove it. Thanks for listening. This was hard to share, but your support means everything. See you in the next one.